안녕하세요. 제가 오늘 해볼 게임은 다곤이라는 게임인데요. 짧은 게임이라고 해가지고 한번 해보도록 하겠습니다. 공포 게임인 것 같긴 한데. 고고! 게임 시작. 다곤은 스토리와 분위기에 초점을 맞춰 이거 HP라고 읽는 거 맞아요? 러브크래프트가 쓴 원작을 인터랙티브 형식으로 충실하게 각색한 게임입니다. 이 게임에서는 어려운 선택을 강요받거나 행동 순서나 부가담을 관리할 필요도 없으며 게임 내 이동은 간단히 주어진 이야기에 따라 각 장소를 옮겨가는 선에서 이루어집니다.
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
상호작용. 상호작용을 오른쪽 마우스 누르라는 건가?
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below.
몸에 던진다는데?
Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate.
잠깐 소리 좀만 줄이자. 나 이런 거 무서워한단 말이야.
When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
끝났나? 응.
It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider. The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation. So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval
뭘로 넘겼어? 포로데우요? 안 좋은 거 아니야? 뭐야? 훈족은 원래 유럽을 지배하고 서기 5세기경 로마 제국을 침략한 중앙아시아의 유목민 집단입니다. 이들은 난폭하고 잔악한 전사들을 비롯하여 강력한 합성공 올가미 초기 공성 무기들을 개발한 민족이자 신속한 습격의 달인으로도 악명이 높았습니다. 제1차 세계대전 동안 영국은 독일군의 잔혹성을 강조할 목적으로 훈족이라는 용어를 독일 사람 전체를 칭하는 명칭으로 사용했습니다. 훈족이 독일 말하는 거야? 하지만 실제 이 용어의 유래는 독일 제국 황제 빌헬름 2세가 1900년 7월 27일 중국으로 향하기 전 병사들에게 전한 다음 연설이었습니다. 우리와 맞서는 적은 모두 패배의 잔을 마실 것이다. 자비를 베풀지 마라. 포로를 남기지 마라. 너희 손에 죽은 이가 누구든 그 물건은 너희 것이다. 1000년 전 아틸라 왕 휘하의 훈족은 그 명성으로 세계의 이름을 알리고 역사와 전설 속에서 언제나 강대한 존재로 남게 되었다. 우리 독일 또한 중국 어디서든 중국인이 감히 우리를 쳐다보지 못할 만큼 독일인이라는 그 이름을 너희 손으로 깊게 새겨주기를 바란다. 포로 수용을 거부한 이 연설은 1899년 제1차 헤이그 회담에서 체결한 전쟁 법률과 관습에 대한 협약 상황을 명백히 위반한 것이었습니다. 어렵네. 이렇게 표시를 끌 수 있었구나. 근데 그냥 봅시다. 나 무서워.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors, that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone, in a small boat, with water and provisions for a good length of time.
몰래 탈출해버렸?
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings. Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator.
망망대해에 혼자 남겨진 거야. 항해사도
Of the
아닌데.
longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
진짜 무섭겠다. 나 이런 거 진짜 못 견딜 것 같아. 어? 네? 어? 어?
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land.
물도 마셔주고.
But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue.
이거 바다에서 살아남기 책 좀 봤으면 괜찮았을 텐데.
The change happened whilst I slept.
모든 것이 변해 있었다.
Its details I shall never know.
뭔지?
For
무서운
my
거
slumber,
나 마음을
though troubled and
준비한다.
dream infested, was continuous.
와,
When at last I awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations
답이다.
as far as I could see, and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air and in the rotting soil a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core. The region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish and of other less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing and nothing in sight save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
광어회는 인정이야.
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths.
근데 이 정도 됐으면 차라리 죽는 게 나을지도. 무서워.
So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might. Nor were there any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
저거 왜 두쿵두쿵거림? 어? 광어회. 상호작용.
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens.
삼엽충 있어. 근데 광어회는 좀 매운탕 마려운데 얘는?
As the day progressed, the
맛있게
ground lost
생겼는데.
some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
광어는 매운탕이지.
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal. All day I forged steadily westward, guided by a faraway hummock which rose higher than any other elevation on the rolling desert.
좀 무서운데 이거? 이거 에일리언 그런 것처럼 생겼는데? 향유고래. 짱큰 고래. 고래.
That night, I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
징그럽다, 근데.
By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance. An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill.
여기서
I know
어떻게
not
잠을
why
자야
my
돼?
dreams were so wild that night, but ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more. Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again, and in the glow of the moon I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day.
그니까 가만히 있었어야지.
Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy. Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset.
에?
Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence.
보통 밝은 낮에 이런 데 올라가지 않는? 어두울 때 올라감 이걸? 어떻게 올라가? 짐을
I
대고
have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon. Whose
아니야.
black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine.
에?
I felt myself on the edge of the world,
세상의 끝이요?
peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined.
내려가?
Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy
근데
footholds
이
for a
검정색
descent,
도대체 뭐냐 이거 기름같이 생긴 거.
whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual. Urged on by an impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath, gazing into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet penetrated. All at once, my attention was captured by a vast and singular object on the opposite slope, which rose steeply about 100 yards ahead of me. An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
저게 뭐임?
That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself.
얘 지금 그냥 꿈꾸고 있는 거 아니야?
But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature. A closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express. For despite its
돌아가자.
enormous magnitude, and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith,
모노리스가 뭐예요?
whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures. Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely.
약간 모노리스가 그건가 뭐 외계인 같은 거 막 적어둔 그런 느낌인가? 외계인 관련된 걸 막 기록 작아두고.
Now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above
Wow.
the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm, and revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope. Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures. The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books,
너무 잘 그려놨는데?
consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans. Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world.
아니 이거 가운데 있는 거 말고 나머지는 그냥 딱 봐도 뭔지 알아볼 수 있게 생겼는디?
But whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain.
나 여기 횟집인 듯?
It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
이거부터 보자. 스토리텔링 방법. 주거를 통한 이야기 전달. 일기장 등장인물의 수기. 바다 위로 떠오르는 섬. 또는 실제 사건이나 신화에 기반한 가공의 신. 로브크래프트가 저술한 이야기 중 대다수는 다곤과 비슷한 방식으로 마무리됩니다. 결말을 이야기하면 재미가 떨어지니 자세히 언급하진 않겠습니다. 난 상관없는데. 이거 보자.
Plainly visible across the intervening water, on account of their enormous size, were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a Doré. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men, though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto, or paying homage at some monolithic shrine which appeared to be under the waves as well. Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer.
에드거 앨런
They were
포.
damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and
뮤지컬
flabby
노래로
lips.
알았는데. 물갈퀴가 달린 손발. 깜짝 놀랄 정도로 넓고 헐렁한 입술. 손발이 어디 보여? 안 보이는데?
Glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seem to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background. For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself.
아니 몸집이 크다기보다 고래랑 몸집이 비슷한데요? 뭔가 착한 고래를 죽일 만큼 나쁘다는 건가? 그럼 쟤네들이랑 마주치면 안
I
되겠네?
remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size, but in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe.
신보다 괴물같이 생겼는데.
Some tribe whose last
무섭잖아.
descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born. Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me. Then, suddenly, I saw it.
뭐?
With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dock.
그럼 빨리 움직이지 않을래? 가만히 있지 말고 도망가.
Fiend-like and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then.
깜짝이야.
Of my frantic ascent of the sloping cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little.
야, 보통 위험하면 빨리빨리 움직여야지. 거기 가만히 서가지고 뭐해, 이 바보야.
And laughed oddly when I was unable to sing. I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat. At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods.
난 쫓아오는 거 아니겠지?
When I came out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital.
갑자기요?
Brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean.
아,
In my delirium, I
떠내려온
had
거
said
누가
much,
구조해줬대.
but found that my words had been given scant attention.
아무도 내 말을 안 믿어. 나 정신병자 취급당하는 거
Of
아니야?
any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing.
근데 여기 왜 이렇게 뭔가 구멍 뚫리고
Nor did I
해병원
deem
같이
it
생겼.
necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe. Once I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the
네?
fish god.
많은 일을 하셨네. 다곤 또는 다가는 블레셋 사람들이 섬기는 주신으로 풍요와 작물을 관장하는 고대 신으로 중동 지역에서 숭배를 받은 신입니다. 아카드의 통치자들은 다곤을 전쟁과 정복의 수호신으로 여기기도 했습니다. 다곤은 아시리아 시문에서는 죽은 자들의 심판자로 등장했으며 바빌로니아 문헌 중 한 곳에서는 지옥의 간수로 묘사합니다. 히브리어로 다그가 물고기를 의미하기에 다곤의 이름을 잘못 해석하여 종종 물고기의 신으로 오해를 받곤 합니다. 러브크래프트가 쓴 작품 내에서 다곤은 바다에 사는 물고기처럼 생긴 깊은 곳의 존재를 다스리는 해저신으로 다곤밀교라는 비밀 집단의 숭배를 받고 있습니다. 어렵네. 구경 좀만 해봤음. 신기해서.
But soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
어거스트 델레스는 미국 출신의 작가이자 편집자로 러브크래프트와 친분을 다진 후에는 자신이 운영하는 출판사인 아카마우스에서 러브크래프트의 작품을 다수 출간하였습니다. 델레스는 러브크래프트 4호 작품 대중화에 크게 기여했지만 그만큼 수많은 논란의 중심에 선 인물이기도 합니다. 가장 많은 음을 남긴 결정 중 하나는 크툴루 신화의 선과 악의 대립을 도입한 것으로, 이는 러브크래프트가 만든 세계관과 코즈믹 호러에 대한 접근 방식과는 완전히 대조적이었습니다. 그 결과 러브크래프트가 쓴 작품은 오늘날 문학계에서 종종 오해를 받거나 잘못 표현되는 경우가 많습니다. 또한 러브크래프트 본인은 신화를 만드는데 별 관심이 없었으며 크툴루 신화라는 용어 역시 작가가 인간 세상을 떠난 후에 델레스가 만든 것이라는 사실에 주목할 만합니다. 이렇게 어려운 단어가 어렵네. 제 눈높이에 맞춰주세요. 다음. 에?
It is at night, especially when
처음으로
the moon is gibbous
돌아왔어.
and waning, that I see the thing. I tried morphine.
잠깐만. 이거 앞에 써져 있는 거 글이잖아. 나 약하고 소설 막 했는데 혼자 이상한 막 상상해가지고 그런 거 아니야 이거?
But the drug has given only transient surcease.
약해가지고 혼자 이상한 상상한 거 같은데? 망상한 거 같은데 망상?
So now I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
약을 또?
Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm. A mere freak of fever as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man-of-war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment be crawling and worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite.
약을 너무 많이 했나 본데.
I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium.
와, 근데 이거 진짜 현실이면 좀 무서울지도? 혹시 몰라. 예전에 나는 인프 피었을 때 나는 이런 상상하면서 무서웠을지도? 언젠간 지구 멸망한다. 무서운데?
The end is near.
정말이 다가왔다.
I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it.
오지마.
It shall not find me.
뭔데?
God, that hand!
손? 어디? 아, 저게 손이야? 짱 커서
The
손인지도
window!
몰랐네.
The window!
창문으로 가자. 진짜 잠깐만. 얘 처음에 뛰어내린다 그랬잖아. 아니 이거 주인공이 약 먹고 너무 약에 취해서 정신에 문제가 생겼나? 그래가지고 갑자기 뛰어내린 뭐지? 아무튼 망상이었던 것 같은데? 그러니까 다 망상이었나봐. 망상이었는데 현실로 돌아왔을 때도 약을 너무 많이 해서 현실에서도 그 이상한 애가 온다고 착각해가지고 도망가다가 떨어져서 죽은 거 아니야?
러브크래프트의 해피엔딩은 없다. 해피 촉수는 있을지라도.
해피 나루. 그러니까 망상이었나봐. 와, 근데 이거 진짜 30분밖에 안 걸리네. 아니 근데 그래도 잘 만들긴 했다. 짧지만 좀. 근데 이거 원래 약간 소설 읽어본 분들이 조금 더 몰입을 잘할 듯. 재밌었습니다. 그래서 다음은 뭐죠? 저희 다음 해볼 것은 무엇이죠? 아니 근데 망상을 하는 사람이 좀 있어야지 문화가 발전이 되지. 너무 이제 현실적인 사람들만 있으면 영화, 소설 이런 거 안 나온다고. 어느 정도 좀 그런 뭔지 알지? 창작하는 사람들은 어느 정도 좀 망상도 할 줄 알아야 돼. 쉬프피가 미래다. 아니 그런 뜻은 아니고